Greetings, brothers and sisters. This is another Hollywood celebrities dropping like flies.
They're dropping like flies.
Listen, people are dropping like flies out there.
I am
Boop.
pissed off.
We're dropping like flies around here.
We're dropping like flies here. Jeez, sir, 2 more just went down. Dropping like flies.
Too many people around here been dropping like flies already, and where's that getting us, huh? Nowhere. Fast.
Biden's being Biden's being an extremist.
Crush that fly.
I'll be covering the Trump mugshot, which is great, in a video on my other channel, Pockets of the Future, tomorrow, my original channel. But first, let's get into this. It has to do with the moon landing and the alleged moon landing from the Indian space program, the country of India. And let's start off with something I showed you on my last video on my other channel.
We're going to do a mass experiment, a new kind of mass experiment of what happens when you tell people the truth.
So John F. Kennedy, or Robert F. Kennedy, is running a truther-based campaign where he's just going to come out and say the truth, which is, to some extent, he's done. He's accomplished this on some level. But it's going to be put to the test here by me in this video. India makes historic uncrewed landing on the moon's south pole. So this came out, let's listen to this briefly.
Some breaking news into us overnight, with Russia reporting its Luna 25 spacecraft has crashed into the moon. The Luna 25 was launched only 10 days ago, a mission critical to Russia.
Okay, so this was about Russia's, them embarrassing Russia here. All right, but this is more important to what I'm talking about here.
We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon.
So this was September 12th, 1962. It would later become a kind of a big day, after a big day in the future. But this is Kennedy here. Let them.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
That, by the way, one of the most iconic speeches in American history. That was September 1962. That was John F. Kennedy announcing America's intention to put a man on the moon. Well, here we are, 61 years later, and we're talking about another historic moon moment.
Yes, we are, because India just became the 4th nation to successfully land a spacecraft on the moon. But
so I'll get back to the RFK thing in a second.
India is the only country that has ever landed near the moon's south pole, and that's significant.
Here to explain why this is so significant, we have astrophysicist and author Neil deGrasse Tyson here to break it down for us.
This guy, he's breaking it down.
Good morning to you, Neil.
Good morning.
So let's put this in perspective here. Why is this landing so close to the moon's south pole so significant?
Well, so you may know that the farther away from the equator you go, the lower the sun's arc is in the sky.
Okay.
Until you're near the poles, the sun just barely ambles above the horizon.
Okay.
That's crazy.
Same is true on the moon. If you go to the South Pole, where there are craters that have rims, the altitude of the sun over the horizon is not high enough to reach the bottom of the crater. So it's literally where the sun don't shine.
Okay.
And so,
He made it funny.
Stop. So
He's really pleased with his joke.
when the moon's hit by asteroids and comets have water. If water lands in those places, they're called cold traps, and the water never goes away.
Well, that's the key there, the water. So you're near water, and
It's the key. The water's the key. Tell them, Hoda.
That's interesting. But what I found surprising is water is something that may actually be able to be transformed into fuel.
Yeah, so you can drink water,
yeah.
But if you separate the hydrogen and the oxygen, H2O, and bring them back together, it is rocket fuel. And you know what the exhaust is? Water. Okay, yeah, so it's pretty clean rocket fuel, and that's the main engine of the space shuttle. That big orange tank that they used, that's hydrogen and oxygen being merged together to create the thrust to put that puppy into orbit.
Wow.
We understand you actually met with the Indian Prime Minister earlier this summer. What did you to talk about with regard to space exploration.
You won't meet with Dodgy, though. For those of you who watch my Gratefullness Journey series stuff.
That was his first comment. He says, here are our plans for space. We want to involve private enterprise. We want to grow. I said, yeah, good. I said, try to make sure everybody's involved, because then the whole country can participate, because India's a diverse community of ethnicities.
Everybody? What do you mean? Muslims? Is that what he's saying? There is a Hindu nationalistic, like white supremacists, where the Hindus make up the majority of people. And Modi is friendly with them and gets support from them. So it's been considered that he's anti-Muslim.
And religions. And I said, that way the whole country can share in these visions. And maybe ambitions in space could be one of the greatest forces of peace.
I was just about to say, and
wow.
unify.
Wow. Listen to that.
Ambitions in space could be one of the greatest forces of peace.
I was just about to say, and unify.
A unifying force of peace.
Absolutely.
For everyone's
Unifying
future.
force of peace.
Yeah.
Let's let that marinate for a minute.
Yeah, but do they actually go, well, there's no people involved, but still, well, the moon landings are suspect. Okay, so just a brief reminder for some of you, and this might be new information to others of you, but first let's talk about telemetry data. Telemetry automatically collects, transmits, and measures data from remote sources using sensors and other devices to collect data. And so the telemetry data from the moon landing is all the information and that was transmitted back from the from the astronauts and the devices that were aboard the whatever it was, Apollo 11 or whatever it was. So that's pretty important data in terms of the moon landing. And the Apollo 11 missing tapes, there is, well, here it is. Here's a better one. Moon landing tapes got erased, NASA admits. The original recordings of the first humans landing on the moon 40 years ago were erased and reused, but newly restored copies of the original broadcast look even better, NASA officials say on Thursday. They lost the telemetry data, and it's not just the tapes. They taped over, it's like somebody taped over a wedding video with like a football game, right? Like you see things like that all the time, right? In comedies where there's an important video and then somebody uses a cassette back when people used cassettes, and this was reel to reel. But it's more than just this. The telemetry data that was lost is extensive. And it's all the data from the moon landings. So much so that the great Don Pettit said that we couldn't go back to the moon because we lost all of that data. Here he is, Don Pettit.
I'd go to the moon in a nanosecond.
Yeah, he would. This guy, my favorite astronaut, I covered him extensively. I got to find those videos. He's hilarious. Plays a didgeridoo. I mean, he's just, he's got it all going on. But he'd go to the moon in a nanosecond.
The problem is we don't have the technology to do that anymore. We used to, but we destroyed that technology, and it's a painful process to build it back again. But going to Mars...
Why would we destroy that technology?
Should be one of the next series of steps that humans do. The first step should be going back to the moon for a number of technical reasons and exploration reasons, and then after that, Mars, maybe high orbit in Venus atmosphere, maybe going to Europa. There's all kinds of targets to go to, places of interest in our solar system. The only limit to human future is in our own imaginations.
Human future, pockets of the future. So that's Don Pettit. He's quite of a, this guy right here. He went he went into the space various times. The second thing is the Van Allen radiation belt, a zone of energetic charged particles, most of which originate from the solar winds. The particles are captured and held around the planet by the planet's magnetic field. Our planet. And it's a deadly radiation belt, which prohibits humans from passing through it and out into space, right? Other parts of the universe, including the moon. And so getting through this was the big issue in terms of travel to moon or Mars or any of these things. So much so that there was a NASA, I've done this, I had this video a long time ago, but it's a guy describing a probe they sent out through the Van Allen radiation belt. And he said, we have all this great data now because it's the first time we've ever made it through the Van Allen radiation belt, which means he was admitting that the moon landings never happened because, there's a lot of radioactivity in the upper levels of our atmosphere. Like people who, flight attendants and pilots and people who work in planes are classified as radiation workers because, when you're in a plane, you get baked by radiation because there's less, atmosphere in terms of the air being thinner and these things, where there's more radioactivity in the higher levels of the, the above the earth, what we've traveled through when we're flying in a plane or something. And when you go past the Earth's atmosphere altogether, there's lots of radiation. And these, vehicles suffer, not just the people that would be in them. And they couldn't build something with a sufficient radiation shield to get through the Van Allen radiation belt that would be light enough to propel into space. And so the whole space program is suspect because of that. So these are just two reasons why the idea we went to the moon is highly suspect. Which brings us back to RFK Jr., and I believe that there's sincerity on his part to tell the truth. And, he's done that to some extent. He said things that other politicians won't say. It might not be the, actual truth. Getting to the actual truth, which is, the primary truth that has to do with divinity and our souls and what we're really doing here and things like that, is, the truth about God is hard for a human being to grasp, right? So you would have the absolute truth, right? Whatever that is. And there's variations of, distorted truth or kind of truth or, layers of truth. And then we have the official story, which is just out and out lies and illusion, right? So truth is, relative to which level you're talking about. But in terms of what Kennedy's talking about, it's the artificial, the performative lies and political theater that our politicians and media engage in, that all of us that are in the so-called truth community, in air quotes, that we, see beyond, right? And that we know that we're being lied to in an epic way by the powers that be. And Kennedy has, in his way, told the truth to some levels, but there's things he can't say. I'd be interested in hearing him talk about this moon landing stuff because, he'd have to know, like the narrative here. And I can't prove, and you can't prove we didn't go to the moon, but they can't prove they did because they lost the telemetry data. They can't prove that they did. It could easily be fabricated in a way that we use movie sets. There's also this idea that Stanley Kubrick, the director, the filmmaker, was hired to fake a moon landing, and this has been even documented in a Hollywood or a British film, and many other places. People have talked about this as being a possibility. So there's a level of deception here, and when you throw out the idea that the government always tells the truth, which most of us already know is not a real thing, then the evidence would indicate that they faked and staged the moon landing. And again, can't prove it, but they can't prove it either. Like they don't have the actual data to prove they went to the moon. And, they can fudge data and all these things. They never admit to it, right? And JFK Jr., maybe he was lied to because he gave this speech in 1962. We allegedly went to the moon in 1969. He was killed in 1963. But he was a part of this. You know, he was a part of the big vision going to the moon, which was a big deal back then, right? TV was just becoming, you know, something in terms of, you know, every household. I mean, TV was a new thing, relatively new thing in the 60s. You know that everyone was having TV and they were watching things on TV, and a way that, you know, we would look at that content saying, well, that content's horrible, right? Because it was just, you know, network TV and the news was something kind of new to watch, right? And so, you know, his uncle was tied to this debacle, this what appears to be a massive hoax. And, you know, what would he say about this? Like, I couldn't find him talking about the moon landing being fake, but if he's going to be a truth teller, he would, you know, have to at least admit there's evidence to support this idea that the moon landing was fake. One of our greatest accomplishments. Probably the greatest accomplishment on the material world would be landing on the moon, opposed to anything else that you would think of. It's, you know, it's significant. It's certainly America's signature accomplishment. You know, at the time, Russia and America were having a rocket competition. You know, they were both trying to create rockets that could go with nuclear weapons to the other country. You know, the missiles we now have. And it was, you know, it was a competition that had worldwide, you know, dominance and, you know, all the things that came from the Cold War as an outcome. And you can see videos of rockets crashing at, you know, not getting off the landing strip one after the other. Like America was having a disastrous, you know, success rate in terms of rockets just making it off the ground, and Russia too. But there was a race to show everybody that we were going to dominate space. And so there was not a lot of success leading up to the so-called moon landing. And that was another factor. Like there was ramifications of who was going to be to go to the moon first, and staging an event would be, you know, preferable just in terms of not losing face and seen as the dominant. Like if Russia beat us to the moon, you know, there was a race of capitalism versus communism. It had all these other political effects, right? And, you know, him coming out and saying the moon landing is fake would be pretty devastating to his campaign. And these are the things like this that, you know, truth is only what you can be able to present given your circumstances. Like you can't tell the truth at your job. Oftentimes you have to lie. I mean, lie is a prerequisite to your job. Most people have, you know, lies or things that are certainly not true that they have to present. Oftentimes they put out products and, you know, they endorse things they know are flawed and are selling to people or whatever it is, right? Usually your job requires you to lie, and certainly about things that are accepted in the mainstream media and all the things that went on with COVID, people have to go along with these lies. And so, you know, I'm not slamming RFK Jr. here, but what I'm saying is, you know, he's saying he's campaigning on the truth, but there's some things he won't say. And this is kind of a big one because the evidence is there that we didn't go to the moon. And, you know, maybe, I don't know, maybe there's, you know, the evidence is just circumstantial and it's not indicative of what really happened. But I would find that highly unlikely. I would be shocked if we went to the moon. Amongst all the other lies, you know, there's other ones. I mean, I probably believe in Bigfoot before I would believe we went to the moon. Like, you know, if I'd be more shocked that we actually went to the moon than I would be if all of a sudden all these Bigfoot walked out of the forest and started to, like, you know, chastise us for for effing up the world. But anyways, you know, just thought I'd start off with this. Kind of interesting. Let's move on to the other stuff here. Okay, Vivek Ramaswamy ripped off Obama's speech in a way that Jojo Magoo would be proud of. Right? This is what happened here.
So first, let me just address a question that is on everybody's mind at home tonight. Who the heck is this skinny guy with a funny last name, and what the heck is he doing in the middle of this debate stage?
Okay, so let's go back to this here. So when he first said this first part.
First, let me just address a question that is on everybody's mind at home tonight.
nobody's saying who is this skinny guy with the funny last name. Nobody's saying that because this guy has made himself known on the internet, and even if they didn't know about him from the internet, they weren't asking that question. Right? He's got a very douchey fake smile. It's he has a condescending way of being, very arrogant, and he has a condescending way of being. We saw it with Caitlin Collins, and it works good when he's on CNN or MSNBC because he's kind of good at mocking them in their own incompetence, but he does it in a very douchey way. And, he's annoying, like with his smile. And it's, he's a new politician, but he's been like this for a while, and they'll show you that. So that was already, weird. Like it's off-putting.
Who the heck is this skinny guy with a funny last name, and what the heck is he doing in the middle of this debate stage?
The last person in one of these debates, Brett, who stood in the middle of the stage and said, "What's a skinny guy with an odd last name doing up here?" was Barack Obama, and I'm afraid we're dealing with the same type of amateur standing in stage tonight.
He's an amateur. This guy's a professional. That guy's an amateur.
The hope of a skinny kid with a funny name who believes that America has a place for him too.
Give me a hug just like you did to Obama.
The same type of amateur.
And you'll help elect me just like you did to Obama, too. Give me that
the
bear
same
hug, brother.
type of amateur.
So that looks really douchey. Right? I'm not going to pay attention to these debates. I don't know how much entertainment value there was in it. There's so much more going on. When you have Fetterman out there, and I'm not able to cover him like I should, and, enjoy covering Fetterman, and somebody like Don Pettit, we'll see if Trump goes to jail. Otherwise, this is just, like these are NPCs that are just up there that have no bearing on the outcome of anything, right? Until Trump goes to jail or doesn't, he's going to win the nomination if he doesn't. And if he does go to jail, then we'll see. But that's not for many months. But then YouTube recommended this, and it's wonderful. 18-year-old Vivek Ramaswamy takes over the graduation stage, demonstrating his alpha male skills. Vivek Desai, this guy, I don't believe he has any alpha male skills, but let's give it a whirl. I've already seen it. I've already seen what I'm going to show you.
I've been racing my entire high school career. But now when we're finally crossing the finish line, I wish I could have stopped just a little earlier and caught a breath of the fresh air.
Okay, so we know that he just didn't recently turn into a douche. He's been douchey his whole life, right? That's established now. We know, no, he didn't get his arrogant douchiness and his condescending attitude recently or from recent success. He had it all the way back in high school and probably had his entire life. The other thing we know is he probably got beat up a lot, and if he didn't, his classmates hated him anyway. And he was probably wrecking the grade curve by trying too hard and doing all the other things that we can associate with, him and his personality.
That has surrounded me the whole time. Teachers, staff, classmates, counselors, and friends, I'd like to welcome you to the 2003 St. X graduation ceremony. And most of all, to the fellow class of 2003, we are finally here. Yeah.
There would usually be applause when he said that.
I guess we finally are here.
So they're like, oh my God, you shut up. There's no reaction, right?
But the last question facing us tonight is what this really means. In one sense, I feel that at long last, after struggle and after success, that tonight we have arrived. Yet in quite another sense, I'm only...
Okay, so those are his alpha male skills. He had some alpha male skills, and, he's an alpha male. I want to talk about this briefly. People have wanted my opinion on this guy, Vivek. And, because of my association with India, I've been there for a number of years, and there's lots of just wonderful Indian people that do the Saj Marg meditation, and then just people I met in India that are just incredible people. There are a lot of saints, a lot of spiritual people in the country, and there's a lot of corruption, there's a lot of other things. But, probably the best people I know in terms of just, being like highly developed, saintly, doing work for God, devotional people are Indian, right? The Indian population. And I have association with the country, and I like change, and I wouldn't mind I would like to see an Indian president. That would be kind of cool. Somebody who, has Indian background, but not this guy. He's really douchey, and he represents a demographic within the Indian population that is very prevalent in America. And that is the really arrogant, intellectually, people who are really smart, Indian men who are really smart, specifically Indian men. And they just have, if they're in the upper class or they've made it academically and they come to America, they make a lot of money. They have a swagger and, an air about them, a superiority. They talk down to people. There's just, I knew a guy who was a doctor who was like a good-looking doctor who was top of his class. And in the Sajmark tradition, he talked about Master Charji used to just rip him to shreds every time he saw him. Like he would go see the Master Charji, and Master Charji would be like, allopathic medicine's a joke and doctors suck. In a much more refined way, like in a more, subtle way than that. But he would say it and the guy would just get furious. And he talked about how arrogant he was and, growing up and being successful and, what that did to his ego, inflating it. And so there's a persona here I'm aware of. There's a type that I'm aware of here. But also with that, there's American arrogance. Americans are naturally arrogant who are successful. Because if you are successful in the material world, you have to be somewhat narcissistic, right? To make it into the club and be, really well off, be a, multimillionaire or be famous and these things. It's so competitive and you're battling other narcissists and you have to neglect other parts of your personality and character like humility, empathy and conscience and all these other things. Like you have to be sociopathic, and that's why all politicians really kind of have to be narcissistic. You have to have tough skin, and you really have to want to glorify yourself, because what you have to give up and what you have to be put through to get these positions and what you have to sell out in terms of your soul, you really have to want to succeed. Like there's just, people who have that need to be approved by others. I've talked about Madam Expiration Date and Will Smith and some of these other, all these other celebrities, but some of them that just never are able to let go and, just bask in the glory of their previous success. And they need to be constantly fed by a worshiping fan base and all this stuff. And just to be out there, you have to have a little bit of an edge. I need it here. You have to have a little bit of an attitude or whatever. And people who are in the club or wanting to be in the club, and especially politicians, they have to be selling themselves all the time. And this guy Vivek has a fake smile, and he's, he's polished, but in an artificial way. Very annoying. Smiling when there's a smile that people have that when they smile, they light up the room. Like it comes from a good place. When they smile, it's sincere. And it makes you smile, right? It makes you feel good when you see somebody smile, when there's heart involved, and it's a sincere smile. And then there's all these fake smiles that people do. I was able to do it. There's a picture I have somewhere. It's a picture I took in India. It's not the best picture of me, but it was like the day I kind of was able to fake smile. All the time people walk by me and smile at me. It doesn't happen a lot. But, I was in India and, people knew me. And, you'd nod at somebody. And people would smile at me. We have a fake smile. And I'd have to give a fake smile back. And I would try, and then I'd get self-conscious, and my face would contort into some sort of frown-like weird expression. I couldn't see it, but I know, like, it wasn't good. And then one day I was able to do it, but then I lost it. Like, I was able to do a fake smile for, like, when you're taking pictures and things, I was never able to do it. And I have a sort of foreboding people look at me and they think I'm depressed or sad or angry or, I'm not a very approachable person based on my facial expression, but I'm, relatively light and happy every day, especially now as I've gotten older. Inside, but outside, I look rough or whatever, unapproachable. And, I see the value in fake smiling, but, it's fake, right? And this guy is as fake as they come. All right, let's move on to the next thing here. So then there's this. EFT that tracks CNBC star Jim Cramer's stock picks shuts down. An exchange-traded fund that mimics CNBC's Mad Money anchor Jim Cramer's stock picks is shutting down after failing to attract investors. The Long Cramer Tracker, EFT, which trades under the symbol LGIM, will cease trading on September 11th, according to press release. Since debuting in March, the fund, which was launched by Connecticut-based Total Capital Management, has drawn just $1.3 million in investments while managing a modest gain of 2.2%. Well, at least it had a gain, because most of the stuff I think he pushes is a pump and dump. Matt Tuttle, the CEO of Tuttle Capital, also launched the Inverse Cramer Tracker EFT, which buys stock that CNBC host has bet against and short stocks that he has recommended. That fund, which was $3.4 million investment and trades under the symbol SGIM, will continue despite being down 4.4% since its launch. So that's all you have to know, that this guy is not delivering, because you listen to his advice, you make very little money, and probably if it continued, you'd eventually end up losing lots of money, because most of the stuff he pushes is a pump and dump. Texas woman's steering wheel saves her life after someone hurled a spear through her car windshield while she was driving. They're chucking spears at people now. Look at this thing. Looks like it's some sort of thing you could get on Amazon or something. Here's the woman here. There's the spear.
Yeah. Whoa, dude.
Somebody threw that through a windshield.
That is crazy. Look how big that is.
It hit her steering wheel.
Is it heavy?
No, it's not that heavy. I mean, like, if you throw it, it'll go, like, really far. But it's not, like, heavy. It's, like...
5-6 pounds, something like that?
Yeah, but, like, definitely if you throw it.
Yeah, it's going to put some weight on it.
That's crazy. Yeah.
Whew. Man.
You could have died.
I could have died, dude.
It could have just went...
right through me, straight.
Okay, so beware of spears on the highway. Young men are getting vasectomy, studies show. A new study from researchers at the Ohio University of Chicago has found that more men are getting vasectomies, including young men who might otherwise be starting families. From 2014 to 2020, the percentage of all male patients undergoing vasectomies in a given year increased 26% based on health insurance claims. So vasectomies are up 26%, almost a fourth. It's young men, plus there are a lot of reasons why women and men are having trouble conceiving, and birth rates are down. And so that's all you need to know about that. Selfless father of 6 dies after moving son into college dorm. A father of 6 who collapsed while moving his son into a dormitory at Arkansas State University has died. Jeremy was a tender and affectionate partner, his fiancée, 45-year-old Elizabeth Goodson, said. He was a man of the highest integrity, and there's no one like him. This hole in our hearts will not be able to be filled. There he is there. Quite a number of kids there, because she was having kids too. He had a very sudden medical event as we were moving things in. I guess he may have strained too hard. Did you guess anything else? There was, we handed an automated external defibrillator, a device used in cardiac arrest cases. The device was used to deliver electric shock in an effort to restart Tillman's heart, so he had a cardiac arrest, but the defibrillator came up empty. So then there's this. WWE's Bret Wyatt died at 36. It says here, cause of death, he died from a heart attack. So, you know, this is another athlete, somewhat famous athlete, kind of an athlete, dies relatively young. China's yuan is displacing other top global currencies in trade, but not the U.S. dollar. Yeah, that's for long. And so the yuan is, you know, one of the reasons that the economy works is the yuan is kept low. And so China can be a merchandise producing place where they do a lot of exports, like all the stuff you see in the stores from China. But if the yuan increases in value, then the stuff that we buy cheaply at Walmart or Costco or these other places will go up astronomically, and it will affect both the American and the Chinese economy. So this is something to, you know, look into. So on the front page of the New York Post, worst nightmare. A sobbing 5-year-old rings doorbell for help after school bus makes wrong stop in 105-degree heat. Will you help me find my mommy? This is in Oklahoma, right? And imagine a bus dropping a kid off in the desert under those heat conditions. I mean, it's lucky the kid wandered up to a house and had the wherewithal to go there and, you know, get help. You know, he just effed up. Like that bus driver, this kid could have died. Man hunting Drew Barrymore's home, arrested and charged with stalking days after she was rushed from staged. Why in the world would you be stalking Drew Barrymore? How is that your choice to stalk somebody? Naked wolfman spotted by hikers in German mountains. He wouldn't take his eyes off us. And so here's the video. There's the picture of the guy. There's a naked wolfman with a stick living out in the mountains of Germany. I guess there's just people like that. He's surviving on his own somehow, and, you know, maybe he was looking to procreate with some of the people who were filming him. Maui residents say water official removed after wildfires were unfairly targeted. Wow, I butchered that headline. Maui residents say water official removed after wildfires was unfairly targeted. Native Hawaiian farmers, advocates, and lawyers are calling for Kilio Manuel's reinstatement after a developer claimed he delayed water resources during the battle against the fire. Well, there's also something else here. I don't know if it's coming up next. It's somewhere along here. Okay, so I was a little confused because this is the headline that I clicked on. Maui residents say development company took advantage of wildfires and water dispute. And so that was the headline I just read to you, which I butchered earlier. It says this: a group of farmers, activists, and lawyers is rallying behind a top water official who was reassigned after the catastrophic wildfires, saying he's become a scapegoat in the ongoing finger-pointing about how the fires grew out of control so quickly. He was a member of the State Commission on Water Resources when the 3 wildfires erupted on Maui on August 8th, has come under intense scrutiny after a land developer wrote a letter to him accusing the water commissioner of delaying additional water resources during the blaze. But Manuel's advocates question the facts and motives behind West Maui Land Company's claim that the Water Commission had a hand in delaying a water diversion and behind the state government's decision to reassign him as criticism mounted. So it says here that they're saying that the Maui Land Company, which supplies waters to parts of Lahaina, is using the fires as a pretext to tap into his stream, which he needs to maintain his farm, where he grows vegetables used in native Hawaiian dishes. So he's saying that this land management company is now trying to grab onto some water rights, which, you know, I wouldn't think would be a big deal in Hawaii, but maybe it is. I mean, it is everywhere. And this is another way that they're trying to grab onto stuff using this tragedy as a way for land grab, or in this case, a water grab. Miley Cyrus sheds tears, reflects on her partying days, an emotional, new, used to be young music video. I just tell you that whether she's old or young, she still sucks. The song is honoring who we've been, loving who we are, and celebrating who we will become. Who is this we that you speak of? John Stamos embraces 60th birthday with steamy nude showering snap. Was he doing this in Germany, perchance? Is he the naked wolf man? Lizzo's former dancers reacts to planned countersuit, insidious attempt at intimidation. You know, she should be canceled because it's not just the staff, it's also her. There was a famous director who was going to do a biography film of her, documentary, and she said she was miserable to work with, a horrible person, and she quit after a couple of weeks. And so there's a lot of information coming out about her being just a nightmare and oppositional to what she's supposed to be about, and celebrating big women and being, you know, a positive person. Like, that's how they're marketing her. And so, you know, it's amazing that she hasn't been canceled. Ariana Madix defends sharing home with cheating ex Tom Sandoval 5 months after breakup. There was a line here. I have never been someone who came from money. I know how quickly that goes away. So I don't know anything about Vanderpump Rules. And, you know, whatever. I saw her talk about this cheating scandal that was covered by New York Post in like 50 to 100 different articles. And I covered a little bit of it. But they made such a big deal of it. She's still living with the guy because, you know, he has money or whatever situation that there's there. Financially, it's financially beneficial. And then there's this. Kevin Hart says his body is a mess after NFL race injuries. My boop looks like a thumb. Well, that ain't good. You're doing something wrong.
Yep. Well, you know it's going to be bad. Anytime somebody starts off by saying, well, it's bad. Ladies and gentlemen, the age 40 is real. To all my men, women out there that are 40 years old and above, it's not a game. Respect that age. Respect that age. Or that age will make you respect it. I was just forced to respect it. This is just a public service announcement because I know people may see me out. And I don't want you to be alarmed, but I'm in a wheelchair. Yeah. I'm in a wheelchair. Why? Well, because I tried to jump out there and do some young stuff. Tried to go out there and do some young man stuff, and I was told to sit my ass down. Shouts out to Stephen Wiley. I'm going to go and put this story out there before you do. Me and Stephen, we got into a little debate. This debate was based off of who was faster. Those that know me know I'm pretty fast. Stephen said, Kev, ain't no way you're going to beat me. Stephen is an ex-NFL running back, played for New England Patriots. Very good guy. I said, Steve, you can bet it. He said, bet. I said, bet. We get out there, we go run the 40-yard dash. 40-yard dash. Guys, I blew all my shit. Tore my lower abdomen. My abductors are torn. I don't even know what that is, but I tore them. I tore those two. I can't walk. Sit my ass down. This is for
from a 40-yard dash, like
44. Tell you what, you just lost, son. You just lost every opportunity of me going to racing you anytime soon. It's over. Kenneth, it's over. Sit down. What are we competing for at this age? Why are we, like, what am I doing? Why did I even race? Stupidest shit ever. Now I can't walk because I'm somewhere trying to get the title of the fastest at the barbecue. What was I thinking, son? God, got to be the stupidest man alive. It is what it is, man. This is life. I'm out. I got about 6 to 8.
I just want to wrap this up because there's a kind of follow-up to Ray Liotta stuff, which I covered quite extensively in the beginning of Hollywood celebrities dropping like flies. Like Ray Liotta is one of the key, the early founding fathers of Hollywood celebrities dropping like flies. It took forever for him for them to give an autopsy saying he died basically of a heart attack and just, a breakdown in his overall health. He was falling apart. And so I watched the TV show Blackbirds on Apple. I don't want to call it TV show, whatever they do that. They have these 6-episode things that are on all these streaming services. They're like long movies. 6 hours, 5.5 hours of a story. So it's like, a mini series type of thing. And Apple TV kind of sucks. I mean, the whatever that Separation or whatever it was, I can't think of the name of that show. I like that, Partition or something, where these people had lives where they would go and become an alternate ego in their work environment, which was kind of weird, but ended up being good. But a lot of stuff they put out there is pretentious or just stupid. It's very politically correct, and they're trying to be cutting edge. It's very woke over at Apple. And so, I got it free with whatever. I mean, I have Apple stuff. And you get a year free, and then they with all these things, they give you a temporary trial, and then you forget to unsubscribe. But I watched this thing, Blackbird, and it was really well done. It won like 4 Emmys. I mean, for what it was like a masterpiece. But what it wasn't good. It was kind of depressing and twisted. It was about a serial killer who, a real life story, a true story of a guy who and killed young girls. And spoiler alert, I'm going to say, he basically, the theme of the plot line is there's a cop's son. Ray Liotta plays the main character's father. And the kid's a drug dealer, and he gets busted. And they give him 10 years for, he had some illegal weapons and things, so they tacked on some extra years. And he's given a deal that if he goes to maximum security prison for the criminally insane, that he, can befriend this killer of young girls who's a serial confessor who confesses to things and then unconfesses to them. And he's a Civil War reenactor. And he's really, he's got these big sideburns that he calls Burnsides. And this guy's got an extracted confession from him in this hellish prison environment. And, this guy, the killer at one point talks about how the period of time that he would like to live in the 1800s, it was considered appropriate for girls who are 12, 13 years old to get married. And he says that's now, these new laws are preventing what's natural. And so, that's his jumping off point. And it goes into this guy's twisted mind, and it's just pretty creepy, the parts of it. It's kind of depressing and, not a great thing. I wouldn't recommend it, like I said, even as well made as it is. But the thing I wanted to talk about was Ray Liotta's kind of last role. One of the things he did before he died. He was filming something when he died. So that would probably be his last role, but this was close to it. And Ray Liotta, his character has a couple of strokes, one of which they show you. And then at the end, his face is all, messed up like they did through makeup. But he looked bad throughout the movie, throughout the show. Like he was clearly suffering and going downhill quick. Like I showed you with Bruce Willis with his cognitive abilities in that movie that he shot. Like he's just, they would just feed him lines and he would just regurgitate them without really knowing what was going on, Bruce Willis. and Ray Liotta was really doing poorly. And, you know, it seemed like it was post boop that caused the real Ray Liotta situation. And, you know, he deteriorated physically and then had some sort of major health issue, respiratory problem, and then he just had a cardiac arrest and died. And they withheld that information from the public for, I think, close to a year, at least 6-8 months. And, you know, before that, anybody could see the guy was coming around towards the end of his life. Like you could see him just deteriorating. In this TV show itself. And, you know, so there's that. But anyways, only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano, definitely pointing for the apocalypse and the ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.